He was the man who had everything: a tech empire, a penthouse overlooking the city, and a beautiful, pregnant wife. They were the picture of modern royalty. But when billionaire Griffin Adler cancelled their lavish baby shower with a cold two-line email, he didn't just break his wife's heart, he lit a fire. He thought she was just a pretty accessory to his perfect life. He was wrong. In less than 20 hours, Nora Adler's side of the story would ignite a firestorm online, proving that hell hath no fury, like a woman with a Wi-Fi connection and a story to tell. The scent of 1,000 white peonies, a custom blend created by a Parisian perfumer just for her usually calmed Nora. Today, it felt suffocating, each petal a silent mockery. She smoothed a hand over the taut swell of her belly, the soft Italian cashmere of her lounge dress whispering against her skin. Everything in her life was bespoke, custom-made, hand-picked by her husband, the enigmatic tech billionaire Griffin Adler. Their sprawling penthouse on the 78th floor of 432 Park Avenue, the Gerhard Richter painting hanging casually in the foyer. Even the damn flowers all were symbols of his extravagant love, or so she had convinced herself. The baby shower was meant to be the pinnacle of this meticulously curated existence. It wasn't just a party, it was the social event of the season. Renowned event planner Marcy Blum had been on retainer for 6 months. The guest list was a tightly controlled collection of New York's most powerful figures in finance, art, and tech. Chef Jean-Georges was personally designing a 7-course tasting menu. It was to be a public declaration, a celebration of their miracle baby, the one they had waited 5 long years for, the one who would finally cement their legacy and make the perfect picture complete. But now the Grand Salon, which should have been a vibrant hive of activity with florists and event staff, was unnervingly silent. The only sound was the faint, indifferent hum of the city below. An email brutally cold and impersonal had materialized in her inbox that morning from Griffin's executive assistant. Regrettably, the event scheduled for this Saturday has been cancelled by order of Mr. Adler. We sincerely apologize for any inconvenience. That was it. No explanation. No phone call from Griffin, who was supposedly in Zurich closing a multi-billion-dollar merger. Nora's calls to his Swiss number went straight to a sterile automated voicemail. Her texts, usually answered within seconds, with a flurry of loving emojis, remained unread, a single blue tick, a testament to their delivery into a void. She had tried his assistant, a formidable woman named Genevieve, whose voice was as starched and crisp as her tailored Prada blouses. Genevieve offered only clipped, rehearsed apologies and zero information. Mrs. Adler, my instructions are explicit. I'm not at liberty to discuss Mr. Adler's directives. Panic, cold and sharp, began to pierce the carefully constructed bubble of her gilded life. This wasn't just a cancelled party. It was a public execution. Whispers would already be slithering through the high society circles of the Upper East. Did he leave her? Is the baby, not his, is the Adler empire crumbling? The silence from Griffin was a blank canvas, and her terrified mind was painting it with the most lurid and horrifying possibilities. She found herself wandering into the nursery, a room that had been her sanctuary for months. A hand-painted mural of a celestial night sky with constellations mapped in silver leaf covered the ceiling. A transparent acrylic crib by Uberbub, the epitome of modern luxury, stood in the center. The closet was a miniature boutique of designer babywear, tiny Dior shoes, soft Loro Piana cashmere blankets, and a row of bomb point onesies. It was a room built on fierce love and breathless anticipation. But now it felt like a tragic museum exhibit, a monument to a future that had just been cancelled. Her best friend, Penelope, a sharp-witted art gallery owner from Soho, arrived like a cavalry charge. Her fiery red hair and righteous indignation, a welcome blast of reality. Cancelled? What in the goddamn hell does he mean cancelled? Did he trade his sanity for a bigger stock option in Zurich? Penelope was already scrolling furiously through her phone, her brow furrowed. Liv, it's already on page 6. Adler baby shower mysteriously axed. The comments are a cesspool. They're speculating everything from bankruptcy to a secret love child. She looked up, her normally acerbic expression softening as she took in the raw primal fear in Nora's eyes. Okay, screw the gossip. Forget them. What do you know? Nothing. Nora whispered the word, feeling like broken glass in her throat. She sank onto a plush velvet ottoman, her body heavy with the weight of her baby and her dread. He won't answer his phone. Genevieve is a brick wall. I'm locked out, Penny. He's locked me out of my own life. That night, alone in the king-size bed that suddenly felt as vast and cold as an Arctic tundra, Nora stared at the city lights twinkling below. They had once seemed like diamonds scattered across black velvet just for her. Now they felt cold, alien, and distant, just like the man she had married. She had willingly stepped away from her own promising career in investigative journalism to become Mrs. Griffin Adler. She had learned about art philanthropy and the subtle politics of high society. She had molded herself into the perfect wife for a man in the relentless public eye, elegant, intelligent, superb, and above all discreet. She had played her part flawlessly, but as the hours ticked by in suffocating silence, a new emotion began to smolder beneath the fear and the hurt, a deep, profound anger. He had not just cancelled a party, he had erased her. He had silenced her voice, stripped her of her dignity, and publicly humiliated her in the most brutal way imaginable. He had made a monumental decision about their child, their life, without a single word to her. The power imbalance in their relationship, once a subtle undercurrent she chose to ignore, was now a raging tidal wave threatening to pull her under. She thought back to their whirlwind romance, the grand cinematic gestures, renting out the Musée Rodin for a private dinner, a surprise trip to see the northern lights from a glass igloo in Finland, the way he'd looked at her as if she was the single most fascinating creature in the world. Had it all been a lie? A meticulously crafted performance to create the perfect billionaire's life, with her cast in the starring role of the beautiful, adoring wife? A single, defiant tear traced a hot path down her cheek. He had underestimated her. He saw the socialite, the graceful hostess, the mother-to-be. He had forgotten the woman she was before him, the relentless reporter with a nose for the truth and a spine of steel. He thought he could delete her future with a single cowardly email. But Nora Adler was about to write a new chapter, and this time, the whole world would be reading it. She picked up her phone, its screen, a beacon in the darkness. Her fingers, no longer trembling, hovered over the social media apps she had long neglected. The silence was his weapon. Her voice would be hers. The next day, she wouldn't just be the jilted pregnant wife. She would be the woman who seized control of the narrative. The sun had barely cast its first grey light over the East River when Nora began to write. She wasn't in their opulent bedroom, but in the nursery, seated in the rocking chair, her laptop glowing in the dim light. She didn't want to write a furious, messy rant. Rage was a firework, bright, loud, and over in an instant. She needed a slow burn, something that would seep into the public consciousness and stain Griffin's pristine reputation indelibly. She needed to tell a story, her story. She opened a new post, the blank white screen staring back at her. She took a deep, steadying breath, the scent of unopened baby lotion and fresh paint filling her lungs. Then she began to type. Her first move was to choose the right image. Not a photo of herself crying and broken. Not a glamorous shot of her and Griffin in happier times. She walked over to the perfectly arranged changing table, picked up a single tiny white baby sock, and placed it in the palm of her hand. She snapped a photo with her phone, the impossibly small, soft sock resting in her palm. Her diamond wedding ring, stark and cold, on her finger in the foreground. The beautiful, empty nursery, blurred softly behind it. It was intimate, vulnerable, and powerful. Underneath the photo, she wrote the caption. She drafted it, deleted it, and rewrote it a dozen times, each word chosen with the precision of a surgeon. "This is the first thing I ever bought for our baby," she began. "Before the designers, before the planners, before the endless talk of guest lists and canapes, there was just this, a simple pair of socks. I found them in a little shop on a rainy afternoon and cried right there in the aisle, imagining the tiny feet that would one day fill them. For months, this nursery has been my happiest place. Every detail, every book, every impossibly small hanger in the closet has been chosen with a love so deep it takes my breath away." She paused, reading the words aloud. They were honest. They were true. "Yesterday, I was supposed to be celebrating this impending miracle with my friends and family. I was supposed to be surrounded by laughter and joy. Instead, I woke up to an email from my husband's assistant, informing me that our baby shower, our celebration of life, was cancelled. No phone call, no explanation, just silence. I'm writing this from the floor of our silent nursery. The phone I keep checking remains dark. The man I love, the man who put this baby inside me, is on another continent, and I have never felt more alone. People will say this is a private matter, and it is, but it was made public the moment a press release was drafted before a conversation was had with the mother of his child. This isn't about a cancelled party. It's about being silenced. It's about being made to feel small and insignificant in what should be the most powerful and cherished time of a woman's life." She finished with a direct, heartbreaking appeal. "I don't know why my husband has done this. I pray he is safe. I pray there is a reason that makes sense of this pain. But in his silence, all I have is my own voice. And I have a story to tell. Hush, my side of the story." Her finger hovered over the post button. This was the point of no return. The Adlers were notoriously private. Griffin's entire public persona was built on control and carefully managed optics. This post was a grenade thrown directly into the center of that pristine image. She thought of the baby moving inside her, a gentle, reassuring flutter. This was for him, to show him his mother was not a victim. She was a fighter. She hit post. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the notifications began. One, then a dozen, then 100. It was like a trickle of water turning into a flash flood. Her best friend Penelope was the first comment. "I am here. I love you. Your voice deserves to be heard." Then came the deluge. Friends, then acquaintances, then complete strangers. Women shared their own stories of being dismissed or ignored during their pregnancies. Journalists she had once worked with sent messages of support and offered to help. The hashtag #MySideOfTheStory started trending in New York within the hour. By lunchtime, it was trending nationally. The photo of the tiny sock was everywhere. News outlets from the New York Post to Vanity Fair embedded her post in their online articles. "Billionaire's wife goes rogue," one headline screamed. "Nora Adler breaks silence with heartbreaking post," said another. The narrative was no longer Griffin's to control. It was hers. The public response was overwhelmingly on her side. They saw the cold, powerful billionaire and the vulnerable, pregnant wife he had abandoned. They connected with the universal fear of being left alone, of having your joy stolen, without explanation. Nora didn't reply to the comments. She simply let her one powerful post do the work. She felt a strange sense of calm settle over her. The fear and panic were still there, lurking beneath the surface, but they were now joined by a surge of adrenaline and purpose. She had taken the first step. She had spoken up. Late in the afternoon, her phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. It was a video call from a Swiss number. Griffin. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She stared at the screen, her thumb hovering over the accept button. After everything, what could he possibly have to say? Nora's hand trembled as she accepted the call. Griffin's face filled the screen and her breath caught in her throat. He didn't look like the triumphant titan of industry she'd seen in photos from his business trips. He looked haunted. His normally perfect hair was disheveled, his jaw tight with stress. He was in a dark, sterile-looking hotel room, the collar of his expensive shirt unbuttoned. The background was stark, impersonal. "Liv," he began, his voice raspy, desperate. "Take it down. Please. Right now." It wasn't an apology. It wasn't an explanation. It was a command. The small ember of hope that had flickered within her, the hope that this was all a terrible misunderstanding, was instantly extinguished, replaced by a cold, hard fury. "Take it down," she repeated, her voice dangerously quiet. "Is that really the first thing you have to say to me? Griffin?" After 36 hours of silence, after publicly humiliating me, you command me to erase my feelings, to once again be silent for your convenience. "You don't understand what you're doing," he said, his eyes darting off-screen as if he were expecting someone to walk in. "This is bigger than a party. This is not a game." "A game," she scoffed, a bitter laugh escaping her lips. "You think this is a game to me? I'm sitting in a nursery that feels like a tomb. The entire world is speculating about the state of our marriage, about the paternity of our child, and you call me to tell me to take it down. Where are you, Griffin? Are you with someone?" The question, the one she had been trying to suppress, was finally out. A flash of pain crossed his face. "No, God no, Liv. It's not like that. It's complicated. You have to trust me. Trust you." The word was incredulous. "Trust is earned, Griffin. It's built on communication and respect. You've blown up the very foundation of it. You cancel our life via email, and then tell me to trust you. Give me one reason, one single solitary reason, why I shouldn't believe you've found a new model to decorate your jet with, and are just trying to figure out how to discard the pregnant wife." "It's business," he said the words, sounding hollow and weak even to him. "It's a sensitive deal. I can't talk about it. Your post, it's spooking the investors. It's making everything unstable. You're costing me Nora. Do you understand? This could cost me millions, billions even." And there it was, money, the excuse for everything, the reason he could justify any cruelty. To Nora, it was the ultimate confirmation. He wasn't worried about her, or the baby, or their marriage. He was worried about his deal. She was just collateral damage in his relentless pursuit of more. "So, that's my price, is it?" she said, her voice dripping with ice. "I'm a liability on your balance sheet. The pregnant wife is bad for business. Well, I'm so sorry my public humiliation is spooking the investors. Maybe next time you should consider your optics before you treat your wife like a disposable employee you can fire via memo." "Please," he begged, and for the first time she heard genuine despair in his voice. But it was too late. She couldn't separate his despair from his self-interest. "Don't do this. We can fix this. Just take the post down, and I will get on a plane as soon as I can. We'll fix it." "There's nothing to fix until you tell me the truth," she said, her resolve hardening. "And you and I both know you're not going to do that. You hide behind your lawyers and your assistants and your non-disclosure agreements. You've built a fortress around yourself, Griffin, and you left me on the outside. Well, congratulations, you're safe in your castle, but you can't control the story out here anymore." Before he could respond, she ended the call. Her heart was pounding a wild drum against her ribs. Tears streamed down her face, hot and furious. It was worse than she could have imagined. He hadn't just been thoughtless, he had been callous. He had weighed her pain against his money, and his money had won. Meanwhile, in Zurich, Griffin slammed his fist on the hotel desk, a guttural roar of frustration tearing from his throat. He wasn't in Zurich for a merger. The story was a lie, a cover for something far more sinister. The hotel room wasn't just a room, it was a pendai. He was a prisoner of a different kind. He looked at the headlines flashing on his tablet. Adler's pregnant wife accuses billionaire of abandonment. Is Griffin Adler hiding a dark secret? They were getting closer to the truth than they knew, but they were aiming at the wrong secret. His phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't Nora. It was a block number. He answered, his voice low and tense. "What do you want?" A distorted voice on the other end chuckled, a sound like gravel grinding together. "Saw your wife's little post. Very touching. Looks like the pressure is getting to you, Adler. Makes you sloppy. You should have kept her on a tighter leash. The price just went up. Double it. 24 hours. Or the whole world gets to see what you were really doing in Shanghai last spring." Griffin's blood ran cold. The man on the phone wasn't an investor. He was a blackmailer. And the post Nora had written, her cry for help and act of defiance, had just made everything infinitely worse. He had tried to contain a forest fire by blowing on it, and now he was standing in the middle of an inferno. He had no way to tell Nora the truth without putting her in even greater danger. His silence was meant to be a shield, but she had perceived it as a sword, and in her pain, she had just handed his enemy the perfect weapon. The call with Griffin, as infuriating as it was, had a crystallizing effect on Nora. The hurt and confusion morphed into a cold, clear sense of purpose. Her husband had reduced their crisis to a business transaction, a matter of spooked investors and potential financial loss. Fine. If he wanted to play business, she would conduct her own form of due diligence. The investigative reporter she had been before marrying him wasn't gone. She had just been dormant. Now she was wide awake. She wiped her tears, squared her shoulders, and called the one person she knew could help her navigate this murky world, Penelope. "He called," Nora said, her voice flat, devoid of the earlier emotion. "Begged me to take the post down. Said it was bad for business." "That son of a bitch," Penelope spat. "He's worried about his stock price while you're going through this. Okay, Liv. What's the plan? Do we hire a scorched earth divorce lawyer? Do we leak his tax returns? I know a guy." "No," Nora said, a new steely tone in her voice. "Not yet. I'm not going to be the scorned wife. I'm going to be the reporter on the biggest story of my life." He said, "This is about a sensitive deal in Zurich. I want to know what that deal is. I want to know who he's meeting with, what company he's supposedly merging with. I want to know everything." Penelope was silent for a moment, then a slow grin spread across her face, audible down the phone line. "I have missed this, Nora. Okay, journalist. What do you need from me?" "You have connections in the art world, the finance world. People who hear things. I need you to listen. Any whispers about Adler Corp making a big move? Any chatter about a merger? Specifically, with a European tech or pharmaceutical company, something that would necessitate a trip to Zurich." "Consider it done," Penelope said. "I'll make some calls. What's your next move?" "I'm going to do what I do best," Nora replied. "I'm going to follow the money." For the next 2 days, the Adler penthouse was transformed from a luxurious home into a makeshift newsroom. Nora pulled out her old laptops, reactivated encrypted messaging apps, and fell back into the familiar rhythms of an investigation. She started with the public records flight, manifests, corporate filings, press releases. There was no official record of an Adler Corp merger. No press release, no SEC filing, nothing. Then she went deeper. Using a secure connection, she accessed financial news terminals she still had subscriptions for. She searched for any unusual stock activity with Adler Corp. There was none. The stock was stable, even slightly up. Griffin's claim that her post was causing financial instability didn't hold water. It was a lie. This only fueled her determination. He wasn't lying to protect a deal. He was lying to hide something else. Penelope, true to her word, worked her network. She had drinks with a chatty investment banker, lunch with an art dealer who sold to half of Wall Street, and called in a favor from a gossip columnist she secretly fed stories to. The response was unanimous. There was zero buzz about an Adler Corp merger. In the high-stakes world they lived in, a deal of that magnitude would have generated whispers, no matter how sensitive. Griffin's trip to Zurich was a ghost. "But I did find something," Penelope said, calling Nora on the third day. "My banker friend Freddie said something weird. He said Adler Corp has been making some strange internal money transfers, large sums, millions being moved to offshore accounts. Not illegal, necessarily, but strange. He said it looks less like a company preparing for a merger and more like a company trying to hide assets. Or pay someone off. Pay someone off. The words hung in the air between them. An affair. It was the most logical, if most painful, conclusion. A multi-million-dollar settlement for a mistress. Cancelling the baby shower would have been part of the negotiation, a show of commitment to the other woman. The thought was a physical blow. Nora felt the air leave her lungs, the nursery walls seeming to close in on her. It made a sickening kind of sense. The secrecy, the lies about the business deal, the desperation in his voice. "Liv, are you there?" Penelope's voice was gentle. "I'm here," Nora managed to say, her throat tight. "I need proof, Penny. I need a name." That night, driven by a desperate need to know the truth, however ugly, Nora did something she had never done before. She went into Griffin's home office. It was his sanctuary, a sleek, minimalist space of glass and steel, the one room she rarely entered. His main computer was protected by a password she didn't know, but his travel laptop was on the credenza. She opened it. To her surprise, it whirred to life without a password prompt. Sloppy, or arrogant, she didn't know exactly what she was looking for. She opened his browser history. The usual financial sites, tech news, a few luxury watch blogs. Then she saw it. A series of searches from a few weeks ago, all made late at night. Private investigators in New York. How to run a covert background check. Paternity testing non-invasive. The blood drained from her face. Paternity testing. He suspected the baby wasn't his. The theory of an affair was instantly shattered, replaced by a far more insidious and insulting possibility. He thought she had been unfaithful. He had been investigating her. This was the secret he was hiding. The public cancellation of the shower wasn't about another woman. It was his twisted, cruel way of punishing her for a betrayal she had never committed. It was a calculated move to isolate and shame her before he lowered the final boom. The hurt was immense, a crushing weight on her chest. But beneath it, her reporter's brain was whirring. The timeline didn't quite add up. Why would he be investigating her while simultaneously planning the most extravagant baby shower New York had ever seen? Why would he send millions of dollars offshore to investigate his own wife? The pieces didn't fit. Suddenly, another search query from the history caught her eye. It was a name she didn't recognize. Roman Kovac. Griffin had searched this name dozens of times. He had also searched for news articles related to Kovac, most of them from obscure European business journals. Nora typed the name Roman Kovac into her own search engine. The results were sparse. A few articles mentioned him as a shadowy Eastern European businessman with rumored ties to organized crime. He had a reputation as a corporate raider, someone who specialized in hostile takeovers, often using unsavory, borderline illegal tactics. One article mentioned his involvement in a scandal in Shanghai a year ago, but the details were vague. Shanghai. The city. The distorted voice on the phone had mentioned to Griffin. Nora felt a chill crawl up her spine. This was more than a domestic dispute. This was something darker, more dangerous. Griffin wasn't investigating her. He was investigating Roman Kovac. And the offshore payments, the secret trip, the lies. They weren't part of a divorce strategy. They were part of a war she hadn't even known he was fighting. The name Roman Kovac changed everything. Nora's theory of a scorned husband preparing for a bitter divorce evaporated, replaced by a chilling new landscape of corporate espionage and potential danger. She spent the next 20 hours digging into Kovac, using her old journalistic tools to access encrypted databases and foreign news archives. A picture began to emerge of a ruthless predator, a man who operated in the shadows of the corporate world. His MO was to find a vulnerability in a company's leadership, a past misdeed, a personal secret, and exploit it to force a sale or seize control. Shanghai. The word echoed in her mind. Griffin had been in Shanghai last spring to launch a new R&D center for Adler Corp. Nora searched for Adler Corp Shanghai and Roman Kovac. The search results were a jumble of press releases and business reports, but then one article from a small independent financial blog caught her eye. It was titled Adler's Asian Expansion Hits Snag Amidst Ethics Probe. The article was vague, citing anonymous sources, but it alleged that a local official in Shanghai had been bribed to fast-track permits for Adler Corp's new facility. The official was later disgraced in an anti-corruption sweep, but the Adler connection was never proven, and the story died. The timing, however, was significant. Roman Kovac had business interests in that same district of Shanghai. It was a thread, a very dangerous one. Just as Nora was connecting these dots, she received a message request on Instagram. The profile was private, the name generic, a friend. The message was brief. I know what Griffin is hiding. It's not what you think. He's in trouble. I can help you understand. Nora's instincts screamed at her. It was a trap, but it was also bait she couldn't ignore. She replied, "Who is this?" The response came instantly. "Someone who knows Roman Kovac and knows what he's doing to your husband. Meet me, no phones. The Gagosian Gallery, Chelsea, 2 p.m. tomorrow. Come alone." She immediately called Penelope. "It's a setup, Liv," Penelope said, her voice sharp with alarm. "This has all the subtlety of a B-grade spy movie. Don't go." "I have to," Nora insisted. "Penny, this Kovac is a shark. Griffin didn't suspect me of cheating. He was searching for paternity test, not for himself, but to see what kind of dirt someone could dig up on us. He was trying to figure out his vulnerabilities. The cancelled shower, it wasn't to punish me. It was to protect me. If Kovac is a blackmailer, a massive public event with all our powerful friends would be the perfect stage for him to make a scene, to detonate a bomb in our lives." The realization dawned on her with absolute certainty. Griffin's cold, clumsy actions were not those of a man leaving his wife, but of a man trying to shield his family from a threat he couldn't explain. His plea for her to take the post down wasn't about money, it was about fear. Her viral story hadn't just embarrassed him, it had raised the stakes for his blackmailer. It had put blood in the water. The next day, against Penelope's strenuous objections, Nora went to the Gagosian. The gallery was quiet, the vast white space punctuated by massive, colourful sculptures. A man stood in the centre of the main room, his back to her, studying a painting. He was tall, impeccably dressed in a tailored European suit. He turned as she approached, and a disarming smile spread across his handsome, chiseled face. He looked to be in his late 40s, with silvering temples and piercing blue eyes. "Mrs. Adler," he said, his voice smooth with a faint, unplaceable European accent. "Thank you for coming. My name is Anton. I am a former associate of Mr. Kovac." He gestured to a bench. "Please, you must be seated." Nora remained standing. "What do you want? To help?" Anton said, his smile never wavering. "Roman has your husband in a corner. A youthful indiscretion, a business deal in Shanghai that wasn't entirely above board. Roman has the proof. He's demanding an outrageous sum. But more than that, he wants to destroy Griffin's reputation and then pick the bones of his company." It all lined up with what Nora had discovered. "Why would you help me? What's in it for you?" "Let's just say Roman's success is not in my best interest," Anton said smoothly. "He's greedy, and he's getting sloppy. Your husband is trying to handle this quietly to pay him off. It's the wrong move. Roman will just keep coming back for more. The only way to deal with a man like Roman Kovac is to expose him." He leaned in slightly, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "He has documents, recordings. He keeps them on a secure server, but he has a hard copy backup. A ledger. He keeps it with him always. In a briefcase. He's paranoid. If you could get that ledger, you would not only free your husband, you would have enough evidence to put Kovac away for a very long time. He then told her that Kovac was in New York. He was staying at the Baccarat Hotel under an alias. He would be meeting a contact at a private club in the meatpacking district that evening. Anton laid out a plan, a risky, almost cinematic scenario, where Nora could create a diversion, allowing an associate of Anton's to switch Kovac's briefcase with a duplicate. Nora listened, her mind racing. It was too perfect, too neat. The helpful stranger, the evil villain, the one simple task that could solve everything. Her reporter's instincts were screaming louder than ever. This man, Anton, wasn't a former associate. His suit was too expensive, his confidence too absolute. She looked at his polished shoes, his Patek Philippe watch. This wasn't a man who had fallen out of favor. This was a man at the top of his game. "How do I know I can trust you?" Nora asked. Her eyes locked on his. Anton's smile widened. "Because we both want the same thing, to stop Roman Kovac." In that moment, Nora saw it. A flicker in his eyes, a micro-expression of triumph. The pieces of the puzzle rearranged themselves in her mind with blinding clarity. There was no Anton, the helpful ex-associate. There was only one man who would know every detail of the blackmail plot. One man who would be orchestrating this entire meeting. One man who would try to use her Griffin's biggest vulnerability as a pawn in his own game. "You're not Anton," Nora said, her voice steady and clear, the realization landing with the force of a physical blow. "You're Roman Kovac." The smile finally vanished from his face, replaced by a look of cold, predatory assessment. He had underestimated her, just as Griffin had. He thought she was just a scared, emotional, pregnant wife. He didn't realize he was talking to a journalist who had spent her career reading people and unearthing the truth. The game had just changed, and Nora was no longer a pawn. The silence in the Gagosian gallery was suddenly charged electric. Roman Kovac, no longer hiding behind the Anton persona, let out a short, sharp laugh. It was a sound of genuine, if condescending, amusement. "Clever," he said, his accent now more pronounced, sharper. "Very clever, Mrs. Adler. I can see what Griffin sees in you, more than just a pretty face." He took a step closer, his demeanor shifting from charming confederate to apex predator. "But being clever doesn't change your situation. In fact, it makes it more complicated." Nora stood her ground, her heart hammering but her expression a mask of cold composure. "What do you want, Kovac?" "What I've always wanted. Your husband's company. He made a mistake in Shanghai. A small bribe, a moment of weakness to get ahead. I have the recording, the bank transfers. It's enough to trigger a morals clause with his board to send the stock into a freefall. I was going to offer him a quiet exit. He pays me. I take a controlling interest in Adler Corp at a very favorable price, and the world never knows. But your husband, he's sentimental, and your little social media campaign," he sneered, "it has made a quiet exit impossible. So now the price is higher, and the outcome will be much louder." "You want me to convince him to give you his company?" Nora stated. The pieces falling into place. "Precisely," Kovac said. "You will tell him you met with me. You will tell him you saw the evidence. You will tell him that if he doesn't sign the papers I have prepared, the recording of his crime won't just go to the board, it will go to every major news outlet in the world, along with a fabricated but very believable story about how he cancelled your baby shower because he discovered you were having an affair and the baby wasn't his. I'll destroy his reputation, your reputation, and cast a shadow over your child's life before it even begins." It was diabolical. He would use her own viral story against them, twisting her narrative of a silenced wife into his own weapon. The public sympathy she had garnered would instantly curdle into suspicion and judgment. "You're a monster," Nora whispered, the words filled with revulsion. "I'm a businessman," he corrected her smoothly. Your husband has until midnight tomorrow. I suggest you go home and have a very serious conversation with him." With a final chilling smile, he turned and walked out of the gallery, leaving Nora alone amidst the silent, towering sculptures. She didn't run, she didn't cry. She walked out of the gallery, hailed a cab, and went straight home. The fear was a cold knot in her stomach, but her mind was a whirlwind of activity. She knew what she had to do. An hour later, the front door of the penthouse opened. Griffin stood in the entrance, looking utterly defeated. He was gaunt, his eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep. He had flown back from Zurich on a private jet, a ghost of the powerful man who had left a week ago. "Liv," he started, his voice cracking. "I saw you met him. He called me. I—" "Hush," she said softly. She walked over to him, took his hand and led him to the sofa. She sat him down, went to the bar and poured him a glass of water. She knelt in front of him, taking the glass from his trembling hands. "Tell me everything, Griffin," she said, her voice gentle, devoid of anger or accusation. "Not the lies, not the excuses, the truth, from the beginning." And so he did. The story poured out of him, a torrent of fear and regret. He told her about the deal in Shanghai, the corner he'd been backed into, the stupid, regrettable decision to pay a small bribe to a local official to cut through red tape. He told her how Kovac had resurfaced a month ago, with the evidence like a ghost from the past. He explained the blackmail, the initial demands for money, the offshore accounts she and Penelope had found. "I was trying to pay him," Griffin confessed, his voice thick with shame. "I thought I could buy his silence, just make it go away. I didn't want this to touch you or the baby. I was trying to protect you." He finally looked at her, his eyes pleading. "The baby shower." Kovac threatened to show up. He said he would take the stage and play the recording for everyone. For our friends, our families, the press. I panicked. I saw it all imploding, you at the center of a media circus, the happiest day of our lives, turning into a public crucifixion. The only thing I could think to do was to shut it down, to cancel it. I was going to fly to Zurich, pay him off, and be back before you even knew there was a problem. But he kept raising the price. He was toying with me. "And my post," Nora said softly. "It gave him leverage," Griffin admitted. "He saw how much it hurt you, how the public sided with you. He realized you were my weakness. He decided he didn't just want money anymore. He wants the company." Tears streamed down his face, the tears of a man who had tried to carry an impossible burden alone and had failed. "I'm so sorry, Liv. I was so arrogant. I thought I could control it, that I could shield you from it. But I just ended up hurting you more than he ever could have. I broke your trust. I humiliated you. I am so, so sorry." Nora reached out and wiped a tear from his cheek. The anger she had felt was gone, replaced by a profound, aching love for this flawed, foolish, and fiercely protective man. He had handled everything wrong. His silence had been devastating, but his motives, she now understood, had come from a place of love. A misguided, patriarchal, "I'll handle it" kind of love, but love nonetheless. "You should have told me," she whispered. "We are a team, Griffin. You don't have to fight the monsters alone." He nodded, a broken sob escaping his lips. "I know. I see that now." She took a deep breath. "He gave me an ultimatum. You sign over the company, or he destroys us. He destroys our family." Griffin's face hardened, a flicker of the old fire returning to his eyes. "I'll never give him my company. I built it from nothing, but I can't see a way out. He has us cornered." Nora stood up, a new strength radiating from her. The fear was gone. The hurt was healing. In their place was the steely resolve of a woman with a plan. "Yes, he does," she said, a small determined smile touching her lips. "He thinks he has us in a corner. He thinks he's using my story as a weapon against us." She looked at her husband, her partner, the father of her child. "But he's wrong. My story isn't the weapon. It's the shield. And he has no idea how I'm about to use it." Griffin looked at his wife, truly looked at her for the first time in what felt like years. He saw past the elegant socialite and the mother of his child. He saw the woman he had first fallen in love with, brilliant, fearless, and utterly unstoppable when she had a purpose. A flicker of hope ignited within him. "What are you thinking?" "Kovac's power comes from a secret," Nora explained, pacing the room, her energy electric. "He's banking on your shame. He wants to hide his blackmail behind a fabricated, dirty story about our marriage. But what happens if there are no more secrets? What happens if we tell the truth first?" "Tell the truth," Griffin was aghast. "Live. I'd be admitting to bribery. I could face prosecution. The board would fire me. The stock would tank. We'd lose everything. Would we," she countered, her eyes sharp, "or would we be rewriting the narrative? Right now, Kovac holds all the cards because he controls the story. He's a blackmailer, a corporate terrorist. We need to expose him for what he is. But to do that, we have to be willing to expose ourselves." Her plan was audacious, terrifying, and brilliant. She wasn't just going to be a source. She was going to be the reporter. For the rest of the night, they worked together. Griffin, humbled and finally trusting his wife completely, gave her everything. The timelines, the bank transfer records, the threatening emails from Kovac, the details of the Shanghai incident. He even had a recording of one of his phone calls with the blackmailer, a feature on the security app on his phone he had forgotten about. Nora worked with a feverish intensity she hadn't felt since her days as a reporter. She collated the evidence, wrote a detailed timeline, and began to craft her masterpiece. It wouldn't be another Instagram post. It would be a full-fledged investigative article published on a platform no one could ignore. She reached out to a former colleague, a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist, now running his own highly respected investigative news site on Substack. She laid out the basics, and he, recognizing the explosive potential and trusting Nora's journalistic integrity, agreed to publish it immediately, no questions asked. As the dawn broke over Manhattan, Nora hit publish. The article was titled, "I Was Never a Victim, I Was a Diversion. The story of how a corporate raider tried to use my baby to blackmail my husband." It was a masterclass in narrative control. She began with her viral post acknowledging the world's support. Then she pivoted. "You thought you were reading the story of a marriage in crisis," she wrote. "You were meant to. That was the story the blackmailer Roman Kovac wanted you to believe." In clear, unflinching detail, she laid out the entire show. She confessed Griffin's stupid and deeply regrettable mistake in Shanghai. She didn't excuse it, but she contextualized it. Then she unleashed the full force of the evidence against Kovac. She published the bank records of the extortion payments. She transcribed the threatening phone calls. She detailed his attempt to use her as a pawn in the Gagosian gallery. She painted a picture not of a cheating husband, but of a ruthless predator trying to destroy a family and steal a company. The climax of the article was a direct challenge. "Roman Kovac gave my husband an ultimatum sign over his life's work or be destroyed. This is our answer. We choose to tell the truth. We will face the consequences of our own mistakes, but we will not be destroyed by a criminal. We are putting our faith in the law and in the power of the truth to overcome the lies of a coward." She ended by posting a new photo. It was of her and Griffin sitting together on the nursery floor. He had his arm around her, his hand resting on her belly. They weren't smiling. They looked tired, but united. A team. The effect was instantaneous and seismic. It was a bigger explosion than her first post. Chun Kovac blackmail and #Adler truth started trending worldwide. The Substack article crashed twice from the traffic. News outlets that had been speculating about the Adler divorce were now running banner headlines about corporate extortion. The Adler Corp board called an emergency meeting, but instead of firing Griffin, they rallied behind him. By positioning himself as a victim of a criminal act and coming clean himself, he had paradoxically saved his career. An internal investigation was launched, but the narrative was clear. Griffin had made a mistake, but Kovac was a criminal. The authorities, armed with Nora's meticulously documented article, moved quickly. By noon, Roman Kovac was arrested by federal agents at his suite in the Baccarat Hotel. The leverage he thought he had the secret was gone, laid bare for the world to see, and he was left with nothing but a litany of federal charges. In the quiet of their penthouse, the world buzzing outside, Nora and Griffin watched the news on TV. They were not unscathed. There would be legal battles, SEC investigations, and a long road to rebuilding trust. Their perfect gilded life was gone forever. But as Nora felt the baby kick, she looked at her husband, who was holding her hand so tightly, his knuckles were white. The gilded cage had been shattered, but in its place was something far more valuable, a real marriage forged in crisis, built not on perfection, but on a foundation of hard-won, messy, and unbreakable truth. They had faced the monster together, and they had won. That's the incredible story of Nora Adler. She went from being a silent partner in a billionaire's fairy tale to the warrior who saved her family and her husband's empire. She proved that the most powerful weapon isn't money or influence, but the courage to tell your own story in your own words. Her journey shows us that the perfect life we see on social media is often just a gilded cage, and true strength isn't about avoiding the storm, but about learning how to fight through it together. What started as a story of betrayal ended as a testament to the power of truth and the resilience of love. If Nora's story moved you, please hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next deep dive into the most incredible real-life dramas. Comment below with your thoughts on Nora's brave move